And the one in that bag, I'm sure it's cursed. So hello everyone, welcome back to my very small YouTube channel about knitting. My name is Isabell, I am in France, I have 3 sons and I have 3 cats. Some have said it's related, and if you've seen episode 100, now you know why. And I'm filming these videos in English because I miss my English very, very much. I used to live in the United States, but that was over 32 years ago. And I don't have that many opportunities to be talking in English, so you are my excuse and opportunity to do so about once a week. And today it's going to be a regular knitting adventure episode. I have 3 finished objects. I have 2 works in progress, but I'm going to be talking about only one because my injured finger prevents me to work with mohair for now. So only one work in progress. And if my English mistakes and hesitation do not bother you too much, and if this episode sounds good to you, please stay tuned. Okay, so first finished object. One I have started in May, I think, May 5th, and I finished it on June 17. It's my Emsworth vest or slipover by Isabell Kraemer that I knit with the natural undyed yarn from Lenal West. I went last summer to visit them. It's about an hour and a half away west from me in Cotentin. And I have an episode if you're interested. I will link it down below about my visit over there. It's a farm where two ladies breed 3 different breeds of sheep, and they rescued or contribute to maintain one of them that was almost extinct. These sheep are out year-round, and their yarn is very rustic, let's say it that way, and this is the undyed colorway. You've already seen me knitting with the same yarn, but the mixed one where they mix all the fleeces, so it's sort of a grayish brown. Emsworth is a very beautiful vest. I took a picture of the vest when I was wearing it. It's a bit warm right now to be wearing it, and people are doing yard work outside, so I've waited for a long time. They stop, and they are not stopping, so I closed all my windows, and I hope you're not hearing the chainsaws and everything. So the Emsworth has a very beautiful front panel, which is repeated, and it's the same in the back. You start with the back. You knit until you get down to the armhole with the increases for the armhole. There are short rows at the top of the shoulders. Then you pick up stitches for either side for the front, and then you knit, until each side until you get to the bottom of the armhole. Then you reunite everything, and then you knit in the round to the end. The only real modification I made was to choose to make some twisted rib. I like the way twisted rib look better than regular rib, so also at the collar and also at the armholes. And so there was another big modification I made because, of course, I'm knitting that totally off gauge. I was knitting at, I've already said so, I should, and I looked. Let me check in my book because I did not put it in, once again, I did not put it in my Ravelry page. Okay, fortunately I write, it's my habit since I've been a little girl, I write everything down in my notebook. My beloved sister-in-law offered it to me for Christmas about 2 years ago, something like that. So I was knitting with 3.5 millimeter needles, 19 stitches gauge, and 20 rows in 10 centimeters. And the sample for Emsworth calls for, or the pattern for Emsworth calls for 24 stitches and 36 rows. So you see, it was knitting completely off gauge. I knit the smallest size. I guess I have to check again which size I made. Which size did I make? Did I write that? The first size. Yeah, I knit the first size, and I usually knit size 3 to 4 depending, and I usually knit around 100 centimeter bust. So I went down a lot, and at some point, so I did the calculations were fine and everything. At some point, I just forgot one thing. I followed the directions and the instructions for the armhole for the front and the back, of course. And I totally forgot I was completely off gauge for my row gauge too. I usually am very careful about my stitch gauge, but usually I say my row gauge, I'm going to just measure and we'll see, and for the length we'll see when I stop, so that it stops at the closest between my preferred lengths and a full repeat that will be finished. So I was not too worried about my row gauge, and I should have, because my front here is much longer and the collar here is much wider and deeper than the sample or the pattern, the original pattern pictures. But you see, when you see it on me, it works. It just works. And I'm not too worried about that, because it just works perfectly for me. I like it very much. I haven't been wearing it too much because summer is here in France, at least. We had many beautiful and even very hot days, so no wool for me for now, and more summer knits and cottons and stuff like that. And it's even warmer in my house right now, because when I came back from work tonight, people are doing yard work, and I closed all the windows. It's very warm. So I'm not going to be wearing it. I do recommend this pattern very much. Of course, Isabell Kraemer is very famous, and she does write her patterns beautifully. And I also do recommend the yarn if you do like rustic yarn. Okay, next is the Kallara shawl. I cast it on June 1st after I injured my finger, and because I could not be working on the Emsworth with delicate work with a big bandage and a lot of pain. And so I cast it on June 1st with the recommended needle size and a fingering weight yarn. So which I used 3.75 millimeter needles. And this is superwash yarn, so you may have, if you follow me for a bit, you've been following me for a bit, you know that I have this yarn no-buy project and pattern no-buy project, because I overbought at some point, and I have a couple rules for myself so that it can be bearable. But during that project, I discovered I prefer to knit with natural, untreated, even undyed yarn. But I had bought that superwash yarn at a festival last November. I went with my mother, a sewing festival and a quilting festival. She used to quilt a lot. Now she can't any longer. She tries and it's difficult for her. I do understand that, indeed I prefer superwash yarn to be able to have a reliable fabric or fiber to be working with, for the dye to be the way the fiber takes the dye. It's less reliable with untreated non-superwash wool or fiber, and also the recipes for dyeing yarn are more easily to be repeated on superwash yarn. Even though I try not to work with superwash yarn any longer, I had it in my stash. So That I forgot. I wanted to say in the last episode when you asked me how do I match a pattern with yarn, and usually I start with a pattern and I find the yarn in my stash or I buy the yarn in person. But I had an example for a pattern that went the other way around. This one was also went the other way around. I had the yarn and I was looking for a pattern. And I did procrastinate a lot over that. And I finally asked, and one of you, I tried to retrieve who suggested the pattern. I think I know, but I don't want to be making a mistake. So one of you suggested the Kallara, and it was a perfect idea because it immediately clicked in my head, and I said, yes, the Kallara is perfect. So you start with a few stitches at a cast on at the beginning with an I-cord. You have an I-cord on one side and you slip stitches on the other side, so it does kind of an I-cord. You increase at a different rate on either side of a ridge here, that is a double central decrease. And at some point, you stop increasing on one side and you continue increasing on the other side up to the top. So this is the widest point, and then you decrease again at a different rate from the increase, and you go to the other side and then you cast off at the other side. I'm gonna pause here. I'm not sure why I say that to you, because sometimes I cut the video and I do when I do the editing. I'm gonna go get what's left from my yarn. Yes, and I wanted to do that because you may recall when I had started the shawl at some point, Ambah, sorry, I forgot to say it's Ambah Bryan's pattern. Ambah says at some point that you are 25% in or 30% in, and so you should reserve the correct amount of yarn for finishing the shawl, because the decreases are at a much slower rate than the increases, so it's an asymmetrical shawl. I'm going to try to put it on, and when I reached that point, at some point I was very afraid I would run out of the very colorful sunset, sunrise color here compared to the grapey dark purple that Veronique from Laine à l'Ouest helped me choose. And so I used 81 grams of this one, and I used 80 grams of this one. So you see, almost the same amount. I did not weigh, yes, I did weigh my skeins beforehand, and of course I did not run out because I still have that left. And the feeling of the two yarn the feelings are a bit different, so I guess it's a different yarn, maybe quality. I did not check. I'm going to take this out because it's very warm. And yes, so a very unusual color combination for me. I do love it a lot. So you have the reverse side here that I like too, in a way. You've seen me say that I did not like the way reverse garter stitch look when you change the colors, but in a way this one is quite interesting. So you have it here on the right side, and very unusual colors for me, but as also I've said already in the past, my wardrobe here is a green dress, but my wardrobe is mostly blue. I have a couple green dresses, and mostly 99% is color block, just one color. So having a very colorful accessories like that, or even maybe sometimes sweater, I do like it, because this is a very light summer shawl, so maybe not 100% summer shawl, but I would say spring and colder summer nights and autumn or fall, because I know some of you are going into the winter time, and even all but bunched up around your neck under a coat during the winter time, with a lot of colors, and I think it will bring a lot of joy and a colorful accent in the middle of winter time when everything is dark, and also during the summertime to go with my mostly monochromatic wardrobe. Okay, next is a project I haven't talked about it because it took me 4 days to knit, and I started late one evening, so it's almost only 3 days. It's the Sherbet bandana. Of course, I need that completely off gauge because it's a lamb and kid pattern, a free pattern. You have many bandanas coming out right now. This one is free. And the lamb and kid pattern calls for Aran weight yarn, when I knit this one with fingering weight yarn. And the yarn I got, and I'm going to be having to be talking about that at a later point. I went, I said that already, to Atelier Pure Laine, which is about 2 hours away from me. I came back with a lot of yarn. I also got yarn for some other people for you to try. And Veronique, also Veronique from Atelier Pure Laine, raises her own sheep, and she also has a partnership with another shepherd, and this is the yarn from this other shepherd. So this one is Romney, the one that is the finest one and the darkest one, because if I recall correctly, it's undyed yarn, of course. If I recall correctly, this one has about 20% of the dark fleece compared, and 80% of the clearer one. If I recall correctly, I don't see it here. But anyway, this one is from her friend, and this batch, I wanted to get one, either 500 or a kilogram, 2 kilogram cones. This batch has a problem. So these 55 grams that I used to knit the bandana, she gave them to me just to try, not to knit anything, not to be talking about it. She just said, you need to try it because here you can see this is all that is left. Here you can see, if you want to be focusing on the yarn, yeah, here. The yarn is very, very, very twisted, and there was a problem at the mill. The yarn is too strongly twisted, and when you can block it out, but when you knit, the fabric goes sideways. And I could experiment that, so she said, just try it. So for knitting, she can't sell it for knitting. She said that people have been successfully using crochet or weaving with that without any problem with this batch, but this batch is going sideways. And if I fold it in half, you can see it. You can see it's not even on all the sides when the increases and decreases are asymmetrical in the pattern. So it was not difficult at all to adapt. This pattern, I just looked for my gauge, and once again, I was kind of keeping an eye on halfway point for my 55 grams. This is all I've left, so I guess correctly. One of them is the tail from the cast on, and one of them is the tail from cast off. So I played a bit for yarn chicken, but not quite much. And so when I reached about the middle point of my skein of my ball, I had ball it by hand. I went to for the decreases. Yes, so a little bandana that is, I think it's a very useful little piece. So you see many patterns right now. Lots of them are paid for. Lots of them have some kind of color work. But if you take the Lambent Kid, I'm not sure I said it was the Lambent Kid. If you take the Lambent Kid pattern as a recipe for how the rhythm for increases and decreases, and you make a triangle, an elongated triangle. You can even, I'm sure you can even take a shawl pattern and do it that way. The one thing is usually triangular shawls start at the middle and not sideways. So this is one point you have to consider. But other than that, even though the pattern was for iron weight and 12 stitches gauge for the Sherbet bandana pattern, and I knit at 20 stitches with 3mm needles when the original pattern calls for 5mm needle. So you see, it's not difficult at all to modify, to adapt, to follow kind of the guidelines for increases and decreases, and you get, depending on how much yarn you have, you get a perfect little bandana, and then you can have some inspiration for some color work, or stripes, if this is something that is of some interest to you. Okay, so what I haven't said is that I'm not sure I will buy a cone of this yarn. She said also that if you do a stitch pattern cable or stuff like that, it prevents from the fabric from shifting. Also, what she's tried is to ply it again, because her own pleasure is to weave and ply yarn and do some weaving. So she washed it and plied it again, and the yarn was much plumper, the same way that the undyed one is, and it was not going sideways anymore. But she's not going to be unplying and plying again. I'm not sure how many, 50 kilograms of yarn. So there you have it. I'm quite sorry, because I like the natural colors very much, the natural grey-brown colors very much. So anyway, I have the natural creamy white from the Romney, and I have also the white, undyed white from her amateur, so flock. So yes, you will be seeing more of that at some point. Okay, so these are my 3 finished objects. Now we're going to be moving to my work in progress, and my work in progress is in one of the bags. She gave it to me, but she says she usually give it to people who buy yarn. So you see Atelier Pure Laine with her own really beautiful sheep. They are very friendly and they are playing around, and there were lots of babies when I went there. So they were in the field, so we did not go to disturb them because they were sleeping during the day under a big oak tree. So we did not go there to disturb them. But so this is a natural canvas bag, and she gave it to me. Once again, she did not say anything, and I'm just mentioning it. Okay, so this cursed work in progress is the Rheinfall tea by Meret Buetzberger. So I said one episode before my last knitting adventure that my mother had given me this cotton that is very irregular. You have places it's very, are you going to be focusing or what? Very, very, very narrow, very thin, and other places it's much, much, much bigger. So if I do that, maybe if I do that. So it's much bigger, very irregular. And I kind of like that. And when I swatched, this cotton was very mellow and did not fit, in my opinion, the pattern I had in mind for that. So I've discussed, I'm not going to be discussing it again. I will link, or I've already said I will link the episode 100 down below. So you will be able to see all my thought process, my thinking and my reasoning behind all of that. So this is what the fabric looks like. So it's very, very flowy. And the Rheinfall tee by Meret Buetzberger has, so I will see if it's going to be blocking out or if I will have to iron it or something, because of course it's stockinette, so it's running up, or if I just leave it that way. Has a very loose, the flowy front, the Rheinfall, a very special waterfall spot in Germany, and so that's why she called it that way. And you see regular yarn over raglan increases for both the sleeves and the body. So here you have on the back, I should have maybe placed it on my barber cords because it's all bunched up. I don't like to be using needle cords that are too big. So maybe I'll see if there is a finishing at the bottom. I know I've seen it already. I've read ahead. It's ribbing. I'm not sure there is ribbing on the back or the front. I will have to see again. But maybe if I want to have it a bit more straight, I'll place an I-cord on the back and the shoulders. So I'm once again knitting off gauge. So I'm knitting the second smallest size. So she has XS and I'm knitting the S size. So as far as stitch sizes and width, it's okay. My row gauge is off again and I'm kind of surprised. But anyway, I need to be knitting a bit more than what the pattern calls for even the biggest size, so that the raglan goes where I want it to be. So I'm just doing this with increases that are not every other row, because for the regular raglan increase you place yarn overs. I guess if I do it here on my darker background, you do yarn overs every other row, so that's the way you increase. And now I'm doing increases every fourth row until so that I gain some length without gaining too much width. And if at some point I see it's wide enough, I'll stop increases and I'll continue. And you just have a twisted stitch at the middle of the raglan increases. So, and then after that is just knitting straight. The sleeves, you just need a bit of a ribbing and that's all. So this one, I said it's cursed because I started it and I knit. So this is my third ball. I guess I'm using 3mm needles. Maybe I've said that already. 3mm needles. So it doesn't grow very fast. So I cast it on and I went and I went and I went. And at some point I realized almost at the end, so that's the third ball, almost at the end of my first ball. So I was about here because I've just started. I realized that all the way up to the front, very first few increases I had missed. Not missed a yarn over because it was there, but I'm not sure what I had done. Anyway, it was showing very clearly that it was not a regular increase, even though with this very irregular cotton you don't see something very irregular, but at least you see the rhythm. It was bugging me, and I was thinking, so I'll arrange something, but how do you make a hole when there is no hole? Anyway, I ripped it out. Okay, so I said, okay, I rip out. I can't live with that one thing that I will be the only one to be seeing, but I will see that and only that. So, okay, I rip out and I start again. And you have almost 200 stitches, a bit less than that, 170 stitches. So I was very careful not to twist around, not to twist when I started to work in the round. So I am positive I was not twisting at the beginning. And then I started to knit and knit and knit and knit and knit. And at some point I discovered a twist. I had twisted an infinite loop. I had twisted my stitches. And I think it did happen in the very first few rows. I was not careful enough, and at some point there is enough room for and a very mellow yarn, enough room to, and I'm knitting very loosely because my fingers still hurt. So I'm usually a tight knitter, but this one is a very loose knit. And when I say I'm a tight knitter, no, I'm a regular knitter. A little smidgy bit on the tighter side, but I usually knit on gauge when I have the recommended yarn, or if you look at the yarn balls and the needle size, the recommended needle size and gauge, I'm usually right spot on. So I discovered that twist, most probably because I was not careful enough, and in the first few rows I did twist. The beginning of the row is in one of the increases, so there is that hole, that one stitch that is alone, the yarn over on the other side, or another hole on the other side, so it's maybe it did get twisted at that point, or maybe I twisted it to start with, and I thought I had not, and even though I was very careful. Anyway, I ripped it out again. And I did 3 rows in pattern before I joined in the round to be certain I was not doing anything, and I will thread so that little part. I've already made a little knot so that it stays together. And that time, that third attempt was the good one. So now I'm knitting. Even though I've been knitting a lot in terms of hour, it's my 2.5 bowl. And I've been knitting every night and knitting, and it doesn't grow at all. Okay, so I'll see how it goes, and I'll take the time to be able to finish it, but I'm kind of impatient to finish it because summer is here, so it's a perfect timing for a summer top. Okay, so that's all for my knitting now. If you're interested, I'm going to be talking about more life updates. If you're not interested into life updates, which I understand perfectly, I thank you very much for being here with me, and I do hope I will see you later. And please do all the YouTube goodness that we can do to help the channels that we like. Okay, life updates. My finger, no more. I'm not going to be maybe showing it to you too closely because there are still parts that are really tender, and that when I hit them, it's really painful. But I'm not wearing a bandage any longer. I could cut my nail that had grown enough, and the flesh has grown into the hole that was off. I cut my finger with a mandolin. Cutting vegetables for dinner, so vegetables are very dangerous for your health. You have to know that. And so this is going its own way quite slowly now. But I can knit because you see I finished my Emsworth, and even though I don't want to be knitting with mohair because there are still some little parts that are not very smooth, and mohair hair get caught into it, and I don't want that. So this is going well. I'm on the better side, and it's just going to take a few more days or weeks for the tip of my finger to look normal, and I think I won't have the sensation any longer, nor fingerprints. But it's all going to be okay at some point in the very near future. My mother, it's sort of a status quo. She's accepted to go once a week for a day into a help center. I'm not sure how you call that. They do take care of people who have older people who have cognitive difficulties, whether they are on the early stages of Alzheimer's, when they are all completely, not completely too difficult to be taken care of, or people who are just having cognitive difficulties due to their age. And they do activities, they eat together at noon, and they do games to train their brain. And they also do some kind of physical activity at least once a day for them to have the consciousness of their body and do things also with their bodies. When my mother first went there for a day trial, there were many people she said she knew, but she could not tell who they were, and many people who recognized her. So she's very happy, and she's going to go there about once a week. All the other things, there are some difficulties, but they are more or less being resolved as time goes. So that's a bit better. And on the very bright side, my son Paulin was here last weekend. At first he was going to come the weekend before that, but he did not come. Then he said he was coming this weekend, just the one before I record. And he was coming to get some things because they are going to be going to a music festival, but they are doing some voluntary work there, so they don't have to pay for the festival. It's a 3 or 4 days festival, I think. And so he wanted to get a camping tent and gear that we have at home. And in the end, they did arrange in another way. So he did not need the camping gear at all, but he still came for the weekend. So we went to a restaurant with my eldest son and his girlfriend on Friday night, because she's working during the weekends and on Sundays, so we usually avoid Saturday nights to be doing things because she gets up very early. And the next day we went for dinner on the beach. I had bought everything for a picnic and we went there. The day was very warm, and I had not been because of my finger. I usually go to the beach every Sunday, and sometimes during the week when it's the summertime or when I'm on vacation, but not when I work. But most of the time, at least once in the weekend, I go there and walk by the beach. I'm going to be stopping because the tourists are here. We had a very hard time to find a parking spot, and I just hate that. And there is no way I'm going to go in the line with my car to find a parking spot 5 minutes away from me. So maybe I'll go back to the seaside and to the beach after all the tourists and the summer season is over. but we went for dinner there. We had a very good time, and we had the what we call the sea winds, or the sea winds that were a bit colder, so a bit cooler. So it was just a perfect temperature. And the next day, we went to have a picnic on the countryside not for the dinner that time, but for lunch. And I said, no, I'm not going back to the seaside and, have to drive 10 minutes to find a parking spot when it's 5 minutes away from the house. So we went to the countryside. I thought on that spot there were tables we could use on the shade, but I guess they got removed. Anyway, we sat down. I had everything that we need to be. I had a tablecloth, and so we had the picnic at noon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And after that, we said, okay, let's go to the movies. We went to see the Wes Anderson. I always want to see Atomic City, but I think it's Meteorite City. I'll write it down, the Wes Anderson movie. And after that, I drove him to his to the car he was taking to go back to his place, and there should be at the festival at the end in the day, I guess. And the weather is nice, but for the end of the week they are scheduling some rain, so I hope they won't have too much rain when they are there, because music festival under the rain is not very funny. I've already experimented that, but it's not very, very funny. Okay, so how long have I been talking? 48 minutes, but I'm going to be cutting things out and editing things out. So maybe 40 minutes or something. And yes, it was a very pleasant 100th episode. I recorded last time, and all the comments and all the things we exchanged, talking in the comment section under the video. I love that. I love to be able to feel you with me and me with you, and taking into account what you say and taking that into my life. And you also take things from me into your own life, and that's what makes me extremely happy. And we do have to work on placing some happiness into our lives. And at some point, my knitting was, when I was in a very dark spot, my knitting was the only positive thing that was in my imagination, in my armchair, that was fueling my day. And every little stitch was a success, when what I was thinking was everything that I was doing was bad and a failure. So we do have to actively place joy and happiness into our lives, because it's not coming all by itself. And if we place joy and happiness in one row, one stitch, 10 stitches, these are 10 stitches of positive things that we place into our day, and we do need that. And I thank you a lot for being here with me. I'm sending all my little stitches over to you, the colorful ones, the neutral ones, and yes, I do hope I will see you next time.